Good evening, everyone. My name is Derrickson Lawrence, and welcome to the first in a series of discussions as it relates to working through the crisis. I want to thank you all for being here this evening. There are a couple of things we want to do right off the bat. We want to thank our panel members for braving it and coming in today. Please give them a round of applause. I also want to give the organization, Westchester County Homeowners Coalition, the members who have worked to pull it together. Please give them a round of applause. And our host, Mr. Troy Youngblood in the back. Thank you so much for providing this. It's a great facility. So I chair the Westchester County Homeowners Coalition. We are an organization based in the city of Mount Vernon, and for the past decade have been working on behalf of homeowners as an advocacy group on a range of issues, from taxes, education, the environment, healthcare, and in every category delivering tangible results. So this evening we're going to take on a new issue. When we talk about working through the crisis, it's a new setting for us in a number of ways. You've probably heard a lot about community groups meeting with government, but really focused on social issues. Today, we're focused on the business of government, and that is a new it's a new target for us. And so we're going to begin with the panel members through introduction, and let's begin with our first citizen of Mount Vernon, our mayor. Please give him a round of applause if you want to say anything.
You know, I just want to say thank you for everybody for coming out. This is an important moment in our histories as a city, and we're at a place where a lot of positive is happening, but we definitely have some turbulence as Mount Vernon rises. And I look forward to discussing with each of you about the many great things that's going on and how we're going to add to it. And a lot of the problems that we do have, we can solve, and we can make Mount Vernon much better than where we are right now, because it's our city, it's our home. I love Mount Vernon. I was born and raised here, and I want nothing but the best for our people, for our city. And I can assure you, from the comprehensive plans that we put forward for this area, Canal Village, for the solutions that exist for our sewer system to make sure that we don't get clobbered by the federal government for not complying with the Clean Water Act, to being able to bring back Memorial Field so we all can run again. There are so many great things that's possible, but being here with our Assemblyman, who is one of the best leaders we have in the State Assembly, really proud and privileged that he is our Assemblyman, because he, is not only tall, but carries a big stick, and he definitely knows how to throw his weight around for Mount Vernon. So I want to thank Assemblyman Pretlow for all the leadership that he's been doing all this time. Everybody, let's give Assemblyman Pretlow a big round of applause. But also our legislator, Lyndon Williams, who's been phenomenal at making sure that Mount Vernon gets the resources it deserves. So everybody, let's give our legislator a big round of applause. And Councilwoman Duarte, I just want to say, thank you. She's been a very strong voice of reason on the council, so very thankful for your leadership, especially on the budget. Thank you. But with that, look, I think it's more of the questions, and the only question that I just want to put out there is that I want everybody to think about Mount Vernon like a garden overgrown. We just have to prune it back. We have to weed out some of those deep weeds that keep coming back. But we can do it. We're going to keep at it and keep going so the Mount Vernon's beautiful garden can bloom again. Thank you, Derrickson.
Let me ask Gary to say a few words before we get started, and followed by Lyndon and, of course, our city council person.
Thank you, Derrickson, and good evening, everyone. And thanks for putting this together. I'm here because all of us are here for the same reason, because we love Mount Vernon. I'm not here to support anyone's political agenda. I'm only here for the betterment of this great city of Mount Vernon. I'm tired of the negative news. I'm tired of a lot of things that I see in the papers. I want to us to move forward and be what we were once before, which was like the greatest city in Westchester County. And we have to get back to that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That deserves an applause. Lyndon?
Let me also echo our Assemblyman's sentiments. I want to thank the Homeowners Association for hosting this today. I believe that it's important that we have organizations that are going to put on these kinds of discussions and dialogues. Many of the things we see going on in Mount Vernon, I believe, can be solved. Many of our problems can be solved, but it's going to require people to listen and people to talk to each other, not at each other. I think that when you look around in Westchester County and you look at the other municipalities, they all have problems, but they all are handled in a different way. They're not barking at each other and fighting. I think we've got to find a way to be able to solve our problems without having to have the contentiousness that we have had. And I think it begins with mutual respect for each person and being able to communicate directly what our concerns are. I look forward to the discussion we have here tonight, and I think this kind of civil discussion will help to move this city in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe your mic is turned on.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank Derrickson Lawrence and thank the Homeowners Coalition for putting this together. Thank our host for having us here. It's nice to have a new bright space. And to all of you who are joining us tonight to hear this discussion and try to for all of us to understand each other's perspective. I think it's clear that we need to begin building the base so that we have that mutual respect and trust, and that understanding that we can't do this alone. And so the partnerships that we build with our county, with our state, with each other, is really what's going to get us where we need to go. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
So when we enter into an arena of uncharted territory, which is what we're doing this evening, during the silly political season, we need a set of ground rules. And so we're going to ask Kristen Gibson to come forward to talk about the rules of engagement. Kristen, come on.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kristen Gibson. I'm a homeowner, but also a retired exec and a resident of Mount Vernon. First of all, would everybody please turn off their phones? We do not want to interrupt the conversation. And basically, it's really to the panel that we purposely kept this session short because we want to stick to the facts. This is a conversation to bring us together. So no politics, please. Just a conversation. When a question is asked, we will stick to the question. And my job tonight is that when you start to go off, I will intercede. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. What I'd like to do is just set the stage for the discussion. If you have read a copy of the agenda, there were 3 issues. We have 1, the sewage and infrastructure of our city. We have Memorial Field, and we have our charter. Those are the 3 issues that we hope to get through today. The first 2 are legacy issues. Legacy issues, those are issues that have been with us for the better part of 2 decades. So it has transcended 2 and 3 administrations. We all know that. And so the other sort of observation to make is that when you talk about those 2 issues, Memorial Field and our sewer and infrastructure that's been rupturing, those 2 issues are now in court today, and they are managed by our court system. What does that mean? It means that we are ringing up the register, and guess who's paying for that? We are taxpayers. So looking at it from that prism, we've got to ask ourselves the question whether or not our charter has had some impact, has played some role in us being where we are. Has it outlived its usefulness? And so I'm going to start with that premise and ask each panel member to respond from that perspective. Who wants to go first?
I like to start things off. I don't know if the charter outlived its usefulness, but I have issues with the charter as stands now being followed. There are many items that I think the charter has in it that aren't being done right now. When I was on the city council back in the Stone Ages, I used to get a copy of all the adjustments and changes in the charter. I no longer get them, so I am not really cognizant of any changes that have been made in the last maybe 15 years. So with someone, Janice would probably be better to speak to that because she's currently on the council. But the charter, the Constitution of the city of Mount Vernon, and it should be followed to the letter. And there are just things that people have come to me with saying that they weren't being followed. And I think that we should pull back a little, look at the charter we have now, make sure that's being adhered to before we start talking about changes.
Okay.
Yeah, I come from the same perspective. I served on the city council for 12 years, and I know that from the time I got on the council, that was one of the things that I focused upon, the charter, to really understand what the charter says and what powers, because the charter kind of divides the powers of government between the legislative, which is the city council, and the mayor's office, basically, and the comptroller, who are part of the executive branch. I believe that it's a healthy governmental process to look at the charter occasionally, look at revisions. We've just, at the county, a few years ago, must have been 5 years ago, we've had a charter revision. We had a commission, charter revision commission of citizens throughout the county, and had them take a chance to look through the county charter and propose amendments and revisions that we could enact as the legislative branch. And we've done that. It is healthy to do that, particularly where you're finding that there are discrepancies and contentiousness and disagreements about the powers between the different governmental bodies. Because if you're not able to actually have a workable charter that people are going to follow, you end up in chaos eventually, because what ends up happening is that there are interpretations that are given by one branch of government versus another. And you've got these contentious relationships continuing. So I believe it's a healthy governmental process to have your charter looked at least periodically, and have it looked at not by only the people who are in office, but by citizens in general on a commission that is independent of the government.
I just want to continue to build on that. So I guess we're starting at the state level, coming down to the county level, and now we're here at the local city level. I'm in my second year of my first term, and what I've observed in the short time that I've been a council member is that the dysfunction that we're observing is really stemming from a basic lack of trust. And I believe that the only way where do we start rebuilding that trust is what Assemblyman Pretlow said in terms of the process and following the process. It's true, at this point in time, all three branches of government are not following the charter. There are so many examples across the board in which we are observing that. We're not following our policies, we're not following our procedures. I think some of our most egregious examples are not following our procurement process. And that is a point of contention that I continue to bring up on the council. Matters are brought to our attention, they're discussed for a lengthy period of time. Nothing is really followed in terms of our policies and procedures, especially with regards to procurement. And it builds up to a point where it becomes a crisis. And when it becomes a crisis, then while I don't agree with it, I understand why the council makes certain decisions, especially when they make decisions where they are waiving a lot of the procurement processes in order to just get past that crisis. With that said, where does the charter come in? I think it is a healthy exercise for us now to start revisiting the charter, to initiate a commission of interested citizens. I've already mentioned this to Derrickson Lawrence because I know of the work that he did on the commission with the county. I think when we're looking at the charter, the first round of revisions that I would probably consider are what can we do to stabilize the operations of the city so that we can realize savings? Because right now we're not observing policies that are meant to guide the operations of the city, and as a result, it's impacting us significantly. We're not being efficient. With regards to even just major projects like we have with Memorial Field, like I said, we need to build partnerships, and we need to look to our county officials, and we need to look to our state officials for that support. There are projects that are just way too big for what we may be able to handle at this point in time. And so with the mandate from the state, from Governor Cuomo with regards to shared services, I think we need to explore that deeply, because we can either realize savings in that way, but we also can get the resources and the support that we need from the county and from the state, but primarily from the county. Some of that can be done through intermunicipal agreements, but I think we also need to consider what revisions to the charter we may need to make in order to enable that further. And I just want to, actually a couple more points I want to make with regards to the big projects, specifically to Memorial Field and also to the YMCA building. Both projects are an example of where we failed.
Excuse me, Janice, we're going to hold Memorial Field to
Okay.
later.
We can come back to it.
We want to stick to
We can come back to it. So let me just make one, can I just make one more point? It was related to the charter, but we can come back to that later, that's fine. But a broader discussion, which County Legislator Williams brought up, which is the balance of power. We do have 3 branches of government, and I think that right now, the current setup has led to an imbalance. And I think we need to look at the charter, look at how it is set up, and what areas do we need to recalibrate in order to rebalance. And so wherever the charter plays a role in that, I think is important for us to review.
Thank you. Thank you. So, truth and facts. I brought with me some information that I think will help put some more facts on the table. And the fact is, our government is structured like a 3-legged stool. There's the mayor, there is the city council, and the controller, which is elected. And when any leg of that stool gives way, the stool falls. And what I have here is a letter that was available in the back of the room. It's by Commissioner Brett Erasmus, who's the Commissioner of Management Services, and he details how Mount Vernon owes about $5.5 million in unpaid bills. And I believe that the charter definitely needs to be revisited, as it is the same charter that was written in 1892. It's the same style of charter that Tammany Hall operated off of. And that must change. No matter where you stand or where you sit, in New York City, they deemed this design of a charter as unconstitutional, but Mount Vernon still has it since 1892. So the charter must change. I'm prepared to call for a charter revision commission. However, I've asked for funding. We need to pay people to research and write laws and do stuff that, happens in between the meetings. A lot of people don't work for free. So we need the support for this initiative to be funded. I've asked for it before. I never got the funding. And I want to give you some websites where you can look for more information. But with respect to the charter, I think the CSEA union, which fills out the paperwork for toilet paper to be purchased for our senior centers, I think that's pretty clear. But for some reason, our control, and I'm not throwing shade, I'm just speaking facts. I'm giving you the facts.
Yeah, but let's stick with the charter.
But Chris, no, this is the charter. The charter says we submit the paperwork, it goes through a process, And the charter says that the controller is supposed to process the payment, but yet we still owe the vendor $20,000, $555.97. It hasn't been paid in a year, and there's nothing that we can do other than call upon the governor to please intervene. So that's where things get stuck, when bills don't get paid. So the charter, yes, it needs to be revisited, and I think it begins with looking at whether or not we need an elected controller.
I'm going to ask a very common sense question, because I think simply. Assemblyman Pretlow made the statement when he was opening, that there are areas in the charter that's not being followed, right? He said that. So my common sense mind is saying to me, if the charter were revised today, what would be different in making sure that it's followed if there are areas in the charter today, as it stands, that's not being followed? I think I would like to hear the mayor and our city council person respond to that specifically, because it's common sense. Even if the charter were changed and we're not obeying it as it is right now, what would be different with a new charter?
Well, I just want to go back to the facts, all right? And I just want to flip back, and if any of you would like to get this document, I want to start with Westchester County Department of Environmental Facilities. We owe the county $246,000, $730.02. That's for taking our trash as a city. At some point, the county may say, hey, when are you going to do this? It's not as if we forgot how to process the paperwork. The union's been the same that's been processing this work, and they've been very, very diligent, and I thank them for working so hard. We saw some of the consequences of trucks without parts, for example, with sanitation, and I have a sanitation update as well. And to the point about efficient, I think the point remains, when we present the revision, it has to really look at the flow of government, the operations, the logistics, and I think that requires some time for us to share with you. And that's where, again, I come back to, we'd like to establish a charter revision, but we need people to spend real time synthesizing this information to explain it. And I'll just give you a quick one. On the sanitation trucks alone, it's $50,000 a month for the 6 trucks. If we convert that from a rental to a lease, it's $2,000 a truck, $18,000 a month. That's less than fixing a couple of parts on the trucks we have from 1999. And that's, again, we will continue to ask and follow a charter process. But if the answer is unilaterally no, we're not going to pay a bill because you didn't stand in my office more than 5.5 hours, which is what the Commissioner of Public Works did yesterday, our charter is powerless to hold one of the legs accountable, and that's where I think we have to look at that. So the
question is, are we following the charter today?
The answer is we are following the charter in terms of going through the process to do the people's business. But when it comes to another branch of government, it's very difficult to articulate how that gets stopped. And the only example I can give is yesterday, the Commissioner of Public Works went downstairs to the controller's office with a stack of invoices. So
we're going to stay out of that because the controller's not here to defend herself.
But you asked the question about the logistics. I'm just giving you the answer. And it was rejected after 5.5 hours of waiting in the office to present some of these invoices. And that's where, again, it's easy to say it's not working and we're not following it. But if you're waiting 5.5 hours and you're told to present the information, and we do, the charter's being ignored, and that's where we need the help of our state to really step up and help us more.
What change in the charter would you make to adjust that?
Well, I think perhaps when you look at the city of Yonkers, they have an appointed finance director. New Rochelle has the same. I think Mount Vernon should really explore that. And I think that's something where advise and consent, there's consensus on. But at this point, it's very difficult given the challenges that we have. It's $5.5 million in this, and this is very real.
Can I interject something?
the money ought to be there, yes. I mean, it was budgeted for. But when the answer is, I'm not going to accept it, and the commissioner's here to my right, Commissioner Etheridge, just raise your hand. He can give you more details, but I think that's one change that's glaring right now.
I personally wouldn't support eliminating the position of controller, but as for a charter change, what the mayor said in his opening remark on this is that there's nothing, he has no recourse, the bills aren't being paid. If we change the charter to say that the controller shall, and not may, might, would, if you wanted, or he wanted to, if the controller shall pay bills properly submitted and approved by the department heads, and then given some sort of recourse if that doesn't happen, that's the charter change that you would need. That would work.
Sir, with all due respect, it says it in some aspects with respect to federal dollars. Within 3 days, she's supposed to transfer the federal dollars, and she sent back $1 million just because she felt like it. And that's where I'm just saying, I understand that's a point, but I just want to be very specific. In certain areas, even the city council legislated it last year.
Okay. So
but
let's do this.
It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But I think let me say, I think what you're hearing is really doesn't go to the fundamental reason of why a chart. You're hearing situations of individuals really who are not necessarily following the charter, because I think they'll require, if there is a proper documentation and that documentation is submitted, it's supposed to be paid. But I think that the situation you're hearing doesn't happen, and the finance department of many of the other municipalities in the county of Westchester have the same function, paying bills based on documentation. So the question about whether or not, if you change the charter, is going to change the results, I don't think it will. I mean, I think you have to have, the difference is that with the finance commissioner in many of the other municipalities, is that you have the finance department reporting to an elected official. And so that official can hold the finance department accountable. But it doesn't change the fact that if the person may not pay the bills. But I think you have to have, if you're going to have an elected comptroller and an elected mayor and an elected city council, the real balance is really with the people. At the end of the day, the democracy turns on whether or not the people who elected them are going to decide that, hey, the job that you're doing, we don't like the way you're doing the job, and they will determine the remedy. You can also put, I mean, you have to look at the charter also in terms, I agree that if you look at the charter, it's a document that has not been revised for a number of years. So there are many areas that within that document that need to be looked at. And some of the areas that balance out the issue of management, what I call it, what it is management of the city's funding. In other words, whether or not another branch of government, it's called checks and balances, whether or not another branch of government should have a check on, let's say, a situation where one elected official is not paying the bills or not carrying on the duties that they're elected to do. That's another way to actually deal with it, but it's not going to be an answer that you're going to sit here and come up with. It's going to be getting a commission of interested citizens around, debating and going over these issues, and then coming back with some proposals based on laws and based on what you see happen in that workable in other municipalities.
I'm sorry, but $31 million is being held hostage.
Yeah.
Hold on. Before we go, we may come back to the issue of charter at the end of the discussion. What I'd like to do is transition now to the details on the first two sets of issues that we are here to talk about. So the first is the issue of our sewer and sewer infrastructure, and the first question is going to come from Reverend Marriott.
Thank you, Derrickson. And this is directed to you, Mr. Mayor. It is really no secret that Mount Vernon is being forced to respond to violations and fines associated with the sewer, right? It's not a secret. So I really would love for us all to get a sense of your perspective. What's your perspective on the issue? And secondly, Secondly, and probably more importantly, what's preventing you as our chief executive from being able to resolve that issue? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops with the mayor. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So first, how do you see the issue? And secondly, what's stopping you from resolving the issue?
Sure, thank you. And in July of 2018, this document was circulated. It's the same exact document that describes the challenges that you asked about. And it actually reads, and I'm just going to quote it, "The facts are undeniable. They may try to pass blame, but I fully embrace the buck stopping on my desk." So I just want to make clear, it's clear that we have a problem with our sewers, and we must fix it. But no matter what we've done to try and get cooperation from our colleagues, it's been very tough to get access to dollars to fix what's broken. And the pipes, they're over a century old. They don't owe us anything. They owe us nothing. But they did their best to this point. We've grown, and we must heed what was filed against the city of Mount Vernon back in 2018. And the penalties are staggering. In some cases, it's $34,000 a day per violation. In other cases, it's $54,000 a day per violation. And it spans thousands of days. But these problems can translate into major investments into Mount Vernon. And this is where I'm seeking the support for everyone to take a look at the plan. The plan was spelled out by the Department of Justice and the EPA. They worked years on it with the city of Mount Vernon, even before I was mayor. So it's a really simple process to follow the instructions, follow the law, and it will create jobs and new opportunities. And I want to point to one place, Portchester. They followed the law back in 2008. And I brought the leadership of Portchester to Mount Vernon to talk about that. And look at what happened. Restaurants, shops, a bigger tax base to support their community. The same thing can happen here. And I just want to point out that we're going to struggle because the way the budget has disinvested into solving the problem as mandated by court. And I don't want to overload you with handouts, but the facts are the facts. And I did seek the courts to intervene to provide a monitor for Mount Vernon, very similar to how the school district has a federal monitor observing their progress in rectifying challenges with following the ADA compliance laws in the schools.
So hold on, Mr. Mayor. So let me tell you what I hear. And again, I'm a very simple-minded person. What I hear you saying is that the problem with the sewers is that we don't have the money to fix it, but we have the money to pay the fine.
No. So you know what? That's interesting. We cannot afford the fine, but I will say we do have access to grant dollars that we earned. But the grant dollars have been impossible to access because these are reimbursable grants.
So
We
if
must
they're
spend some
impossible to
money.
access, how do we access it?
So
I
the-
wanted just to make
so-
sure
so-
that we understand the root of the issue.
So the root of the issue is no gas, no go. No parts, no fix. No money, no honey. We don't have the money allocated toward these problems. And in this letter, which has a table on the back, it lays out exactly the dollars that we needed, dollars that are available, but behind a plated glass. And that's where I need your help in this room. And we have the ability at this table to really change this direction we're going because the courts are very serious about holding Mount Vernon accountable, and I'm doing our best to try and make sure we don't get penalized. Instead, we build upon the possibilities. Every single person that's sitting here. And again, I apologize if I didn't ask correctly, but I don't know how else to ask other than show the numbers, show the problem, and try to convene as many people as possible. But look, help me help Mount Vernon. And I can tell you right now, we certainly need help, and we can change it right here in this room.
Okay, let me hear another perspective from our city councilwoman.
Okay, thank you. While it's not ideal and certainly not efficient, having the judicial process intervene is actually bringing the parties together. So there is, and I'm pleased with a lot of the progress that we have made. From a legislative perspective, I have been in constant communication with our DPW commissioner, and I have expressed my support for however I can legislatively support the efforts so that we can demonstrate to the Department of Justice and to the EPA that we're committed to addressing the Clean Water Act violations that we have, and that we're committed not only to fixing them, but also maintaining a clean water system. One thing that I'm concerned about that's not being addressed is the sheer size of the problem, both financially and also from a project management perspective. Financially, it may be too big for the city, and it's something that's not going to be solved in a short period of time. It will require a long-term planning. The mayor mentioned Portchester. They're actually, I think, a good example of a success story. And one of the things they did was build a partnership with the county, and they sought help from the county to help finance their stormwater project. So I think that's going to be key to help us solve the various obstacles that we have that we're going to face along the way. But again, as I said, it's not ideal, but I am pleased with the progress we're making. I think we should celebrate some of those successes, albeit small, but we are making that progress. And so I look forward to continuing to build on that.
Can I have,
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll just explain. Many people don't know what we're really talking about here. Under our streets, there are a lot of things, and we're all now familiar with the Con Edison and their pipelines and tearing up our streets. But associated with the city, there are two lines. There's a stormwater line, which is fresh water, rainwater, and there's a sewer line. The sewer lines go to the sewage treatment plant. The stormwater basically drains into the Hutch and into the Long Island Sound and other places. As was stated earlier, these lines are over 100 years old. And we're calling them pipelines, but they're not really pipelines. What they are bricks that are made in a circle to carry the stormwater and the sewage water to the sewage treatment plant. What's been happening over time is that these bricks are collapsing. They're falling in, which causes the sewer water to drift over into the storm water. So Mount Vernon is in violation because our sewer water is getting mixed with our storm water and going into the Hutch and into the Long Island Sound. The Environmental Protection Agency does not look kindly on that. The way to correct that really at this point is to find where the breakages are, insert sleeves, basically, I'll call them plastic, sleeves into these lines to shore up the fallen bricks and keep the sewage water from going into the stormwater. There's no problem with the stormwater going into the sewage system. They don't like that either. But the real problem is the sewage water, which is raw sewage seeping into the fresh water. It's not going into our drinking water. It's not going there, but it is going into the stormwater system. It's good. She's first and you're second, but I'm not finished. And you broke my chain of thought, Ellie, so. What, you had a question? Oh, you had a question.
Within reading the streets, though,
Con Edison you're
I
talking
saw
about.
that, yes, there were layers, our streets are very strong. They've never sunk it in, for one thing. They have the cobblestone, they have bricks, they have layers and layers of stuff. And the way they were opening them up from the pipes that were going in, I asked them if they were going to put it back like they were. And I know they didn't.
I know they didn't either.
So what I'm asking too now, since you are educating us about the storm water and the bricks, are any of those bricks that they were taking up, holding the storm water?
I don't know which line they were close to.
How close
but,
would they be?
But the problem just is that our sewage lines are collapsing. And whether Con Edison disrupted more or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
but there is an
should
issue
find out.
with our sewage lines, and that's what's causing this problem.
I think we should find out because I don't think they really were concerned
It's gonna be difficult
about
to
that.
check right now, but
Perhaps, if you want to talk to the commissioner, he's over here, he'll give you a detailed answer on the side. But I want you, you all have heard about Flint, Michigan. That is the scale of problem we have beneath us. And we have an opportunity to turn it into a major economic opportunity for our city. But the problem is we are in court. We could have avoided being in federal court. The record is very clear. And if you read the correspondence I sent seeking the relief of the federal court to step in, it talks about what the judge said. And the judge made it clear that we need the cooperation of our other branches of government. And I think this conversation tonight will ultimately accomplish that. And I'm hoping that as you ask more questions, we get down to more progress, because we're coming around this mountain, and we have to go back to federal court in a couple weeks. And I really do not want to show up to court empty-handed, because that's a very bad sign to the federal judge who's not insisting. She already directed us to make more progress than we've made, and I need your help to let's keep solving this problem. And there are grant dollars, by the way, about at least 1.6 million here, and we have another 2 million that's available, but we're struggling to get access to it, and that's where we need everybody's help here. So just to give you a scale, we're talking about, so here it is. We're talking about a 10-year project at least, and we're talking about $150 to $200 million over that time period. And but the benefit is we can really make Mount Vernon green. We can add green infrastructure to absorb rainwater. We can create new parks. We can create so many beautiful things. Look at Portchester, look at Philadelphia, look at what Atlanta did when they built their sewer system. The Olympics came. I mean, these are all positive things that happen when you invest in infrastructure, and we can create thousands of jobs for ordinary people. And it just doesn't stop with the sewer beneath us. There are lead pipes in homes that can be replaced. There's electricity that can be also replaced when we open these walls, and there are grant dollars for all of that. But again, we need to get access to the first initial set of investment to scope out the problem that's listed in the plan. And we have the money to do it, but we just can't get access to it.
Let me suggest this. I think that the city needs to have a plan. I mean, the county and the state helps, but they don't go in and sit and make decisions for the locality. When Portchester working with the county, they come with their plan. And most of the other municipalities.
I just have
let me just finish.
No, I can't, because we have a plan. Yeah. It's lodged with the court. The plan is in court. It was developed. But hang on. He's insinuating that there's no plan, and I'm just telling you.
Well,
factually,
if we're going to have a discussion, maybe we should.
And
we
plan
should
is
have
being
a dialogue, monologue.
Look, but sir, I just have to make sure I'm very clear here. There's a very clear plan. It's very simple. It's map out the problem. The Assemblyman said it. We have $2 million to do that, but we can't access the money to do it.
But let me ask you
and
this.
That's
let me
where,
ask,
again, the
let me
plan
ask you a question.
is available.
Mayor,
if
let me
you
ask you a
wanna read
question.
it.
Pursuant to that plan, did you have a plan to get grants from the federal government?
Yes.
Have you obtained those grants?
We've obtained 2 grants, yes, one from the
Okay.
state and one from the federal government.
And how much are those grants?
$1.6 million from the state of New York, $2 million from the federal government.
And how were they spent?
They were not touched at all because we cannot access the dollars to activate the grants.
And whose dollars, where is the dollars to access to activate the grants?
The $1.6 million is explained in this handout by our engineer, Dolph Rotfeld and Associates. It's a video of him explaining it.
Where does he access it? Where is he asking
The
to
New York
access
State Department of Environmental Conservation has requested a detailed plan. We've provided it time and time again. It requires our investment of about $400,000 to $600,000 to activate the reimbursable
So you're
grant.
saying that the city needs to put $400,000 in order to get $1.6 million?
Yes, and I say it in this letter as well. I lay it out very, very methodically.
You know, I mean, and that is the, I mean, I think you need to really explain that, because if you're not,
That's
if
fine.
you're saying that an investment, because as I said when I started, that a plan, no one steps in and takes over from municipality. The county does not put up money for the sewers in Portchester, I can tell you that. The people in Portchester are paying for their sewer system, okay? They actually work together, and whatever money they can pull from the federal government and the state, they work to get that to supplement the costs of actually doing the work. The reason why I went through those questions is that you've got to be clear to people that
I said I need your help. Thank you.
It's got to be clear to people that you needed to invest $400,000 to get 1.6 million. Now, I agree with that, because if you're going to get funding, no one gives you funding for free. You've got to be able to match. You've got to be able to come up with the funds. And if you suggest to the federal government or any other governmental body that you are not interested in funding, they will not have any kind of sympathy for the situation. So I think that the first point you have to make is the city needed to come together and decide we're going to accept this grant and we're going to fund our share before you can move forward. And that is the beginning steps of what needs to happen. Because you're not going to go to the county or the federal government or the state and says, I have a problem, you deal with it. They're not going to do it. They don't do it for any other community. It needs to start from here. And it needs to start with some cooperation between the local officials that's going to say, look, regardless if I agree with you or not, I know our sewers got problems. And I know that we need to get money and we have a chance of getting funds if we work together. And if they do that, you've got $1.6 million. Isn't that right?
We have 3.6 total.
3.6. Okay, so that's the problem.
So we seem to be building a little bit of consensus here. Let me see whether or not our councilwoman can add to that.
We have some money.
So it's my understanding, and it's consistent with what's being said here now, is that we do have a grant of $1.6 million. There is a 25% match that the city has to demonstrate, and that amounts to the $410,000 and change. In addition to that, the EPA and the DEC are looking for a commitment from the city to invest in fixing a number of the issues, actual construction work fixing the sewers or a lot of the problems. I have one of my major contentions with regards to the budget, and I have stated before, it had many deficiencies, one of which was it lacked this grant match. I have stated to the commissioner, and I'm working with the commissioner, that I intend to bring legislation next week to my council and put it on the agenda to transfer funds into a budget line of those $410,000 to demonstrate our commitment, our financial commitment to that grant match.
Right, exactly.
And I hope, sure, which part, the whole part, everything?
That you're going to do.
I have in my possession a letter from the Commissioner of DPW requesting a transfer of funds into a budget line of the $412,000, which is the 25% grant match to access that $1.6 million. And I am committed to putting that on the agenda next week so that we can transfer those funds and demonstrate our financial commitment to the problem that we have to solve with regards to our sewers, so we can get the $1.6 million and demonstrate not just to the DEC, who is giving us that, who has awarded that grant, but also to the Department of Justice and the EPA that we're committed to doing the work. I think that it's important to understand where we are with regards to that lawsuit, and it's obvious that we have a problem. We've admitted to that problem. Now we need to demonstrate how we're going to solve it. And that's going to play a big role in what penalties we may be subjected to. So that's very contingent upon our action plan. And I know that the commissioner has been working diligently on that. I know that there is progress on a plan. But with regards to my perspective as a legislator and the support that I can give to to the commissioner, to the administration, and to the citizens, is that we will, I will bring forward and put on the agenda, and hope that my council members will follow and support it as well, the financial commitment that we need to demonstrate so that we can get the work done, get access to those grant dollars to support the work that we need to do, and also demonstrate to the Department of Justice and the EPA that we're committed to doing the work. And so hopefully that will translate into the smallest amount of penalty that we may be subject to.
Let me just make one point on this. I mean, this is very, when you look at it, it's a simple solution. And it's a simple solution because when you weigh the benefits and the costs, you're investing, city taxpayers already have the money in their budget that they're being taxed for. You're investing that money in order to get $1.6 million and avoid $37,500 a day in potential fines that could really bankrupt the city. So I think that is, I mean, what Councilwoman Duarte just said tells you, how simple some of these issues can be resolved if people would only sit and talk together and move forward.
Question. What you presented seems totally logical. So where's the problem? Where's the
that's what I want to know.
Where's the instructions in this?
Yeah, what's the?
Where's the
The question is, why is it not being done? And the question is, where is the impetus? I encourage you to read this letter. And I know you got a question there, but I just want to point out, look, wait a minute. There you go. The question was, how are you going to get the council members to agree with it? And now that's what I'm saying. I'm just restating the question so everybody can hear it. The question was, how are you going to get the council members to agree?
Hello? We have to allow the process to take place. First of all, this is our first step to begin this sort of dialogue. Then we'll take it to the next level. Let me just...
But this is an easy one.
It is an easy one. Correct. We all seem
It's
to
been there
agree.
since
We
it's been
agree.
there since 2016, by the way. I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
It's been available since?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. This is,
To what extent has the process from top to bottom ignored the charter requirement that when you go out to bid, when you hire an attorney, when you do a project design, that it has to be approved by the council first?
I'm glad you asked that question because we haven't even gotten to that point yet.
So wait a minute. We've hired attorneys, we're in court, being prosecuted, having hired those attorneys without going to the council.
I want to give you the answer. You said we hired people.
He hasn't finished. Let him finish.
You know what? What the Assemblyman described, although it's expensive, is kind of simple because you got to fix it. And he described what you got to do to fix it. What the county legislator described is it's not a big deal because you're already paying for it. And if you don't pay for it now, you're going to pay for it anyhow. So that's a simple answer. The real problem is you want to turn over a city charter that we haven't followed. And had you followed the charter, we would have been done with this now.
But these things went to the city council previously.
All right,
That's
wait a
not
minute.
fair.
I just want
The council knows about the sewage problem.
I just have to.
Sewage
So,
problem gets addressed because you fix it.
all right. So first, I want to start with some more facts. If you want to delve deeper into this, and I invite you to, you can go to cmvny.com/sewers. There you have the consent orders. There are 2 consent orders there that lay out the issues. You can get the actual court complaint that was filed at the end of June in 2018. And Mr. Goodside, I just want to answer your question about the charter. Every step of the way, we followed the charter. And in fact, there's a person here in the room by the name of Lou Young. He worked for CBS 2 News, and he covered this story for 2 years. And in each of his stories, he lays out the steps that were taken to comply with the EPA And the answer that we got from the city council was no. It's too expensive. And I'm just telling you what happened. Wait a minute. I'm inviting you. Listen, I'm explaining to you the steps. You said, did we follow the charter? And I'm answering the question, yes. And when we got the grant is straightforward, as everyone's discussing. We got it. Okay. We followed the process every step of the way, and we were told no anyway. And that's where I'm coming to you asking for your help. Right. Maybe we weren't clear enough.
So
maybe we didn't invite enough people to talk about it at all the different forums.
Hold on for a moment. Hang on for a moment, everyone.
Noting that Councilwoman Duarte was not sitting on the council when this occurred. That is worth noting.
Yeah, that's correct. That is absolutely correct. Right. But the problem still persists, and that's where we need your help to help fix this.
I want us to actually acknowledge a moment here. What we just had was what I call an aha moment. This is where we need to go in terms of fixing one of these problems. So what I need to do here is put a bow on this one.
No, I can say something, please. Okay. Because what I'm hearing is the reason why this is not being funded is because he didn't go through the right steps to get it done.
That's incorrect.
Well, wait, hold on. I guess my point is, at this point, to me, it's like when my two children are fighting and they're like, oh, he did it first. I don't care who did it first. It's like, can we fix it?
Correct. So that's the point I'm making. We know what the problem is. We know how to get there. So the next phase, what I'd like to do is, okay.
Because I want to address Mr. Goodsight's comment. So with regards to the charter, yes, we have hired attorneys to represent us in this situation. The charter does allow for our law department to retain outside counsel, especially when certain specializations are required, and we don't have that competency in-house. In this case, I know that the law department or the administration has retained an attorney who specializes in Clean Water Act law. So the law department has the authority per the charter to retain special counsel in those cases, and that usually goes before the Board of Estimate to approve that rate and that contract. It doesn't have to go to the council.
So why wouldn't those attorneys present it to the community that they blamed the city council for what was happening? They were representing the city against the city council. Why did that happen?
I can't answer for that. But
that wasn't a public meeting.
But let me also say this. I attended a Department of Justice meeting last year with Councilman Griffith and Deputy Clerk Lauren Carter, along with the mayor and other members of the administration. And it was a meeting with the Department of Justice, the EPA, the DEC. It was all of the representatives there. What was clear to me in that meeting was that there was not a direct line of communication from whatever the Department of Justice or the EPA or whatever information was being transferred or shared with the law department was not being shared with the council. And so there was a break in communication. And from that meeting, what was clear was that the council needed to retain its own attorney, because the Department of Justice said that they would be willing to share and discuss as long as there was an attorney in the process. As a result, the council did seek proposals from various attorneys. We did follow the process, the procurement process, to the best that we could, and we retained an attorney for that intent.
So the issue that I'm raising is now your adversaries in a city where you were on the same side.
If I may, Mr. Goodsight, I'd like to direct you to the transcript from December of 2018, where Federal Judge Seibel laid out her position on this. And she's been watching what's been going on in Mount Vernon for the past 3 years on sewers. And I just want to read you an excerpt, okay? And it says, "The court, but the gentleman at the table to my right, if they consent to the relief that the plaintiffs are seeking, and then the city council doesn't pay for it, this is going to be like the city of Yonkers 2.0, where I'm going to have to be having to hold people in the city council in contempt if they don't come up with the money. Therefore, I think it is a good idea if the city council can get on board, but it's not. This is what the federal judge said. And I have the full 28-page transcript for you to read, and it lays out her logic as to why we are here. And there are so many other things in there that I think will help orient, your understanding, because again, 1.6 million in grant dollars will pay for the mapping of the problems. Then that will give us an opportunity to decide what is the best point or the best plan to fix it without breaking the taxpayers' back. There are ways to do this, but if we don't know what the scope of the problem is, then we can't fix it. So that 1.6 million will position us to map it out. And what you heard was a commitment from the councilwoman to go back to the council and say, look, we need 410,000 to activate this 1.6 million. Let's get it done. And I urge everyone to support her as she goes back to get the dollars to protect Mount Vernon.
Christine Gibson to ask the question.
Okay, so Memorial Field, this is really directed to you, Lyndon. Just give us a quick history. I want Lyndon to give us a quick history because he's been involved in this from the beginning. And then to everybody else at the table, where are we now?
Okay. Sure. When I got on the Board of Legislators in 2009, I worked with other legislators under a program in the county called a Legacy Program. The Legacy Program is a program where the county invests money in open fields throughout Westchester County. One of the parks that actually you can probably look at now is Flowers Park in New Rochelle. Now, in 2009, the Board of Legislators, which I sit on, and approved $9.7 million to come for Mount Vernon to redo Memorial Field. In 2009, we were in the midst of a recession, as you know, and based on that need for jobs, this would have been what they call a shovel-ready project that would have qualified for even more money from the federal government at the time. The project, the way it is structured is that the county give the money to the city, and the city does the project. The county doesn't control the project. It gives the money, and the city does the project. Now, what happened is that the project never got done in Mount Vernon. In other words, it dragged on and dragged on. The county advanced $3.4 million of the $9.7 million to do a design and a demolition. That was not done. The design was done. The demolition was not done. The project dragged on because the city kind of changed the plans into their own plans, basically, without approval. Let me fast forward. 2015, 18,000 tons of what the Department of Environmental Conservation designated as contaminated dirt was dumped on that field, 18,000 tons. And since then has paralyzed the city from doing anything with the field. Because if you go by there now, you're gonna see these mounds of dirt. Okay, that never happened. Come in January in 2018, I spoke to our new county executive, George Latimer, and I'm really skipping over a lot to get to the point, to where we are now. And I sent him a letter asking him for the county to take over the renovations as opposed to giving the money to the city to do it. For the county to take over the renovations of the field, complete the field, and give it back to the city after it's completed. The county executive agreed to do that. We also, Assemblyman Pretlow and I spoke, and we worked very closely together. With the county money, Assemblyman Pretlow got an additional $5 million. So where it stands right now is the county is waiting for the city to clean up the dirt that's there. The city is responsible for cleaning out the 18,000 tons of dirt that's been dumped on the field. And once they've done that, the county is ready to go to get the field ready to go. Let me finish. There's going to be a presentation by the county the design for the field on the 2nd of April. It's going to be at Graham School, where the county is going to present to the community what their the engineers and designers have really decided for the field in terms of how it's going to be done. I encourage all of you to be there, because my sense is that this is probably one of the last shot that we get at getting this done without city money being largely involved. This is money coming from the county and the state for the most part. And I believe that we can work through this, but the field, Memorial Field, has gone through a lot. It's gone through a change of governments. We've had at least 3 mayors of the city that has gone through with the field. So from where it stands right now, the next thing is for the county to have this hearing, and then the county will move forward. Once the city is cleaned up, get rid of that dirt, the county is ready. They're ready to move to get it refurbished. Yes?
And this seems like another no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Where is the obstacle of taking away the dirt?
Well, I'll let the local officials, yes. I'll let the local officials answer that, but I think that they know that it is imperative that we move forward on this field, and the field does not get going until they get that dirt out of there. I was in the...
Aren't you the guys who dumped the dirt there in the first place?
Who? The county? Hold on. What do you mean by that?
I would know better in 4th grade that you don't bring in a lot of contaminated dirt, whatever happened under Ernie Davis, wherever.
Well, when you say you guys, make sure that you understand. I'm not Ernie Davis.
Tennis courts, so Ernie Davis would have his favorite.
So
I don't know what you're doing.
Sir,
Yeah.
I need to
Well,
caution you.
let me tell you that. Let me make it very clear to you, okay? When you make a statement that you're totally wrong. Because first of all, I was one of the persons who stood up against what was done there. So your statement is totally wrong to say that, and it doesn't have a basis in which to claim that. Yes, someone dumped it there.
Lyndon, let me say.
Yeah.
Read the EP, read the report.
Read the report.
Okay? You know what the contaminant was? The main contaminant?
Yeah.
You ready for this? Cinder. Who knows what the track was made of? Cinder. Exactly. Okay. The contaminant was the track itself. Yes, the dirt has to be removed. It is not toxic. It is not radioactive. It is not terrible stuff that you're gonna glow in the dark. Now, I don't know who dumped the dirt. I have no idea who dumped it. Yes, dumping was done. The city is responsible to remove that dirt. Once that dirt is removed and the original cinder track is removed, construction can start. Another alternative is to put concrete over the old track and move on from there. But for you to sit here and say that they would dump this contaminated dirt and all of that, that is totally untrue. And then you should have called somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
If you saw them doing it, maybe you did it.
We need to stay on track here. We need to stay on track here. Hold on for a moment. I'm going to make a statement. Please bear with me. Bear with me for a moment.
It's the truth.
What we're hearing right now is
And the track was the contaminant.
the state we're in is we need to move a particular mound from one place to the next. That's where we are.
Move it out.
So I'm going to ask the mayor to give us a sense of what are the impediments to getting that done.
So I just want to give everybody, I'm going to start briefly at the beginning. There is a consent order by the State Department of Environmental Conservation. It lays out very clearly the steps we must take. How many of you, just by a quick show of hands, remember Legos? Anybody? I build Legos all the time with my kids to this day. Okay, they're 6 and 3, so it's every day. Nonetheless, Legos come with instructions. This is very much the same as it is with the EPA on our sewers and the same instructions at Memorial Field removing the dirt. We had a vendor in the city of Mount Vernon by the name of TomCon. They're right down the block. They rent industrial equipment. We had lined up industrial equipment to start removing the dirt, loading it into various trucks for separation and such. But TomCon wrote a letter, and I'm sorry, I forgot to remind you, Lou, to bring that letter. They took all their equipment away because they didn't get paid. And that's a fact of life, and they're on this list that's available. So I just want you to know the bills have real consequences. And there is an additional consequence because we were supposed to pay an additional fine for not beginning the work of the cleanup by the DEC. So we are fined an additional $10,000. We were supposed to pay that back in July of 2018. And we're susceptible to pay, and this is where we need our assemblyman to go back and say, please, baby, please, don't penalize us more than we already been penalized. Because the penalty is roughly $2.6 million a year for not starting the cleanup. And that's where it's just, look, we need a little bit of resources. And I think it's like $30,000 to rent the equipment, and then we can use DPW manpower just to start the process of separating the dirt. And then we can deal with the tonnage of what goes out to be properly disposed of, and then we can deal with it. But again, the estimated price tag is around $2 million, and that's just what it is based on what the consent order reads. And I just want to let you know and remind everybody that we have a plan. We did an area-wide economic plan. We got a grant from the state of New York. We were successful in gaining access to it. We completed it back in early 2018. Some of you participated in it, and it lays out a vision for a Memorial Field that will make Mount Vernon magnificent. It will make Memorial Field generate revenue. It will make Memorial Field generate new memories. It also lays out a theory, or not a theory, a possibility of a ferry from Mount Vernon to go from behind Target, adjacent to Memorial Field, to City Island and LaGuardia Airport. That positions us to really crush property taxes in the city, and we need that desperately. The grant for this one plan,
the one that you said we got.
the grant to do the plan for the area, and this is where I want to just thank the county legislator. The grant was about $800,000 to do this economic plan, and this plan included a dome stadium at Memorial Field. And the question that you know the legislator and I were talking about before we started was, what are we going to build at Memorial Field? And this is sort of what it looks like, because this was a discussion that the assemblyman and the legislator and I had back in November of 2017. And this is something that we can do with an 8-lane track that this is not a dome stadium. No. But this is part of the, but this is where the county and the city will continue to have a difference of opinion. And this is where I continue to challenge, where's the plan to back up the numbers? We have to operate this thing. We want to make sure it generates revenue. It doesn't cost us as much.
Let me respond to your question.
And that's where, again, I want to be clear. The MOU that was passed was still not signed. And I just want to be clear that I don't want to surrender Memorial Field when we have a big plan that can generate the revenue for our
Mayor,
city.
You got to stop. You can't.
No,
you
I'm
can't
just being clear.
You cannot have a monologue in a discussion.
It's not a monologue.
And you're not going to have.
It's not going to be a monologue.
You're not
it's
going to have
dialogue.
these discussions occurring if it becomes just a monologue, because that's for you to say, for you to sit there and say that somehow or other this plan. Somehow or other, the county is ignoring this plan that you have, what you're suggesting. This plan you have with the Dome Stadium doesn't have, what is the financial consequences of that? The city does not have the money to do anything like that. If the city wants to do a Dome Stadium, when the county plan is completed and the field is redone, do the Dome Stadium over it. But for right now, I can tell you that the residents of Mount Vernon have waited long enough. They've waited over 10 years. And a lot of the 10 years come because of everybody has their own plan. I mean, you have the work was stopped because the former mayor had his own plan. And changing plans are very, very expensive propositions because you've got to redraft it every time you change it. And a plan is not a drawing. A plan is not a drawing. It's more than a drawing. It takes engineering, and it takes a lot more than just putting a picture on a piece of paper. And I don't know, we cannot, what I'm interested in as the county legislator is getting that field done with the money that we have and moving on. And I think that's what the assemblyman has put his work toward. If you,
and that's what we discussed.
If the city,
that's what we discussed,
let me finish. If the city wants to spend millions of dollars after that, you're free to do that. But right now, we cannot hold up what we're doing to really kind of explore another plan. We've done a lot of that, and that's been the problem.
Okay.
so,
Councilwoman Duarte, hold on.
As a citizen of Mount Vernon, I don't want a dome stadium. All I want is the dirt to be taken away.
And that's where we want to start.
Okay.
So,
Count,
okay, so I'm going to provide a bit of a different perspective, and I want to answer the question as to what are the obstacles. The mayor stated that we have a consent order from the DEC, from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. That basically means that the field is under the New York State DEC's control. It's not under the city's control, it's not under the county's control, it's under the DEC's control. We cannot do anything on that field without first notifying the DEC and having their permission to do any activity on that field. That is not maintenance activity, okay? So what are the obstacles? The DEC in the consent order laid out the steps. They needed some testing to be performed, and that testing had several layers to it. Some testing was performed in 2017 and was not complete per the consent order. At that time, there was a decision made to wait. The remainder of the testing was completed in 2018, in August of 2018. Once those tests were complete in accordance with the consent order by the DEC, we were then required to prepare a remediation action plan. And the obstacles along the way have been, in my opinion, political. We have spent time bickering back and forth when we were making progress and without really understanding what were the steps that we needed to take in order to keep it going. I have shared with some of my colleagues, but one of my concerns is that we don't have a project management competency built out in this city. There are other cities who have a larger engineering department, they have a project management department, and when we have large projects like this, it is taxing on us. And when the city takes on the liability in-house, the people who assume the risks associated with that are the taxpayers. So that is something that we seriously need to take into consideration, and it's where I feel partnerships with the county, perhaps in a shared service type of agreement, would go a long way in helping us. Now, this is the reason why the council legislated to amend the IMA, the intermunicipal agreement that we have with the county, to give them control of the renovation. Because the county has a good track record in terms of completing projects. They have, of all of their legacy projects, Mount Vernon is the only one that's incomplete. They've been able to complete all their others. So with that, because of the county's reputation and the county's ability to complete projects, we've been able to secure money from the state. So we thank our assemblyman for that. But it's really because of the involvement of the county that we have that. So I'm disappointed. I'm happy with a lot of the progress that we made last year, because we did, but I'm also disappointed because we have wasted 8 months in bickering back and forth. There were negotiations with the county where we amended the intermunicipal agreement. We legislated on the council, we passed it and adopted it, and it is executed in the eyes of the county. So we are moving forward. I had myself prepared, because I was chair of Memorial Field last year, I had myself prepared a plan in terms of looking at what are the challenges, what are the obstacles, and here are possible recommendations for solutions. This was ignored. I did share it with the county, but interestingly enough, the steps that we have actually made are consistent with the plan that I had put together. So my disappointment is that we continued this back and forth bickering, and it's really just a waste of time. We are and this is why having the judicial process intervene has been helpful, because they have, in some ways, neutralized some of that bickering, because we have, they've ordered it effectively. But, and that has brought the parties together. Again, a lot of this back and forth is just a waste of time. And one of the recommendations I had made, and I had made this to the Board of Legislators when I went to speak to them back in August.
She's saying the truth.
Is that I had asked the county to consider helping the city with remediation, not take up the cost. It's our responsibility. Whatever happened there, but it is the city's responsibility to now address it. But with regards to actually doing the work of addressing the remediation and taking the dirt off the field, I felt that the county could manage that process. They could execute the bidding process. And I had council members at the time who did not want the county involved. They wanted the city to control the bidding process. And that's where, again, I come back to my point. I don't have trust in the city's ability to follow the process and procedures and so that we can execute it effectively. And so I asked the county to consider another IMA to help us with addressing the remediation and getting the dirt off the field. But we can't do that until the DEC approves the plan that has been drafted.
So I just want to add a little. First, I want to thank the councilwoman for her comments, and I want to thank also County Legislator Williams for making sure that the money stays available to the city. But I just want to go through what the court has actually said and done. The court has ordered that certain bills be paid, and that's important for everybody to keep in mind. What are those bills? The demolition bill was $190,000, not the $3 million that was spent or $2 million that was spent. We paid $190,000. So that goes to show you the range and the cost effectiveness of the decision making that has been made. Secondly, the court ordered that an audit be funded, an audit that was blocked for the past few years by a group of people that voted no on funding it. And that's something that you must keep in mind. That's the city council. Am I wrong or am I right? So I just want to be clear that it's not about not knowing the process. It's about not having money to do the job. And the federal judge was clear. The city council has to come up with the money. We have presented plan after plan. And I just want to state that I've asked a variety of business leaders, elected officials, including Mr. Lawrence and Reverend Marriott, and even Ms. Gibson at times, to come in, look at the plans, and tell us, do they make cost sense? Are they effective? We've brought professors from NYU and Columbia to the table to do the cost-benefit analysis, and nothing's been good enough. The answer's been no, 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 but tonight we're getting real dialogue, and that's why I want to say thank you for bringing everybody together, because we're finally having this important dialogue. Now, what's going to happen next? We're going to resubmit the bills to be paid so we can get the equipment to remove the dirt, but we need your help to get past no, and that's where we're counting on our councilwoman and all of you in this room to help get past no on removing the dirt.
On the issue of Memorial Field, I believe that what I would like is to get a commitment on a timeline of when that dirt is going to be responsible. And I'm sure that if that was the case, the county would be willing to do it. The problem is being able to get it done. I came to, since I left the city council, I went to one meeting, which was the last budget hearing, for one intention, to one point, to ask that the city council put funding in the budget to fund the cleanup. Because I believe that if you don't do that, we can't really get moving. And what I was told is that the money is sitting there, okay? If the money is there, then let us activate it right now, let us get a deadline, and let us move and get this done, so that come summer, that this field can start getting done in the time when the weather changes. And I think that's a reasonable proposition that perhaps maybe, Mayor, maybe you can help facilitate with the city council.
I can tell you right now, if we can get Tom Kahn or any other vendor to provide us with the equipment to do the work, DPW will gladly do it. But we can't show up with a shovel and a spoon.
Well, what I'm saying, I'm not saying.
I'm just trying to be. And you've seen the impact with sanitation, and it's real. And this is why I'm saying I'm appreciative of everybody coming together, but I just don't believe in surrendering Mount Vernon We have a big economy, we have a big future, and we can do this. We just need the resources to work with.
Well,
And that-
I don't
and
know what
that's
you
where-
mean by surrendering Mount Vernon,
What I-
because
what I mean-
here you
okay,
have
no,
a
what I-
county
what I-
trying to help you.
No. What
bring
I'm
in
talking
money.
about-
I don't know what that
Gentlemen,
means.
what
Hello,
I'm
hello, hello. Excuse me. I want to say something. Now, I've been sitting here, and there's a lot of things that I do know and I don't. But one of the biggest questions that I've been wanting to ask all night long is, what can you all do to come together and put personal stuff aside, or how you're feeling, and figure out how the city can come together to do what's don't answer yet, let me finish. My main concern from just listening to people talk around town, watching the news, listening to all the back and forth, I see a lot of personal stuff. And one of my friends is running for city council too, and he and I had this conversation. It seems to us that it's too much personal stuff going on, and and in order to make things work, regardless of how one feels, you have to put those personal aside and come together and do what's right, regardless of how you're feeling. And if you can't do that, how can the city come together and do what they have to do? I hear a lot of money going around about what we gotta pay. That goes without saying. But if you're not doing the right thing as the people who are running the city, then it's not gonna happen. So we have to figure that out. That's the main thing I see what's going on at City Hall, okay? And then the other thing I want to say is that with all the bickering that's going on, right? So at what point with the city council, if you have differences, think of the people in Mount Vernon.
Yes.
Mount Vernon was a really, really nice town. It is going downhill fast. And a lot of people want to move out of the city. This city is a hub. It's a major hub. You got everything here. People want to come in. They're watching us. They want to come in and take this city over. So we have to figure out a way that we can keep this city and make it better again. You know, there's no jobs. What jobs? The taxpayers is paying all of the bills. So those are things that we have to work out.
Miss, what's your name? Janice. Miss Janice? Miss Etheridge. Look, thank you. And you're absolutely right. And that's why reconciliation is the objective. And just the other week, just last week, we hosted Queen of the Congo, Queen Diambi. She came, and she's an ambassador for peace and reconciliation. I've reached out to a variety of elders in the community and people of different backgrounds to commence this reconciliation commission. Brother Abishai, how many of you know Brother Abishai, just by a show of hands? I've asked him to lead a drum circle, just to kind of like, let's put it out there, because we need that at this moment. And whatever it takes to bring people together, I'm with it. And that's why I keep, challenging us to come together and let's talk through and just look at, like you said, take the personalities out of it. You got 2 consent orders, one from the state on Memorial Field and one from the federal government on the sewers. And I invite you to just look at the bullet points and look at the dollars we're talking about, look at the grants that we've earned, and just ask yourself, is it worth it for us to support the councilwoman to go back to the council and get that $400,000 so we can get the $1.6 million? Yes, it is. So whatever it takes to get that done, I'm in. Is it worth it to go with our commissioner to see the comptroller about processing some bills for sanitation trucks? He stood there for 5.5 hours yesterday. And I'm just telling you, these are the things that are hard to see, but they happen, and that's where we need your help to pull more people in to achieve the reconciliation that you're seeking.
We are going to try to wrap up at this juncture. I know you have a question, but I want to say a couple of things. Your question echoes the sentiment of the majority of Mount Vernonites in terms of what they see happening today. But I believe that what you heard displayed today were individuals, leaders, who disagreed sometimes, but agreed most of the time, and on some of the substantive issues that we've put before them. So there is a way to make it work. We need to take this model, we need to build on it. And as we close, there are 2 things we need to do. We need to talk about next steps, and next steps in 2 categories. So the next steps in terms of the 3 issues we've talked about, we heard for the infrastructure. It's an issue of supporting the councilwoman in terms of the grant that she has taken from DPW and trying to leverage that into greater dollars. In terms of the infrastructure, well, that's the infrastructure plan. In terms of Memorial Field, it's about moving that mound. And I believe we should get a timeline from the mayor to try to get that done. I think we're also hearing we need to stay within the framework from what has been already proposed so that we can just get that done and get that out of the way. And so, lastly, I want to talk about charter for a few moments.
Look, with respect to, the question was, the mayor said he doesn't want to turn the field over. What I want to be clear on is, what are we building? And if we're going to build something, let's build something that's going to generate revenue from Mount Vernon. And if we keep a small vision, we're going to have a small outcome. If we have a big vision, we'll have a big outcome. And there's numbers, but there's numbers to back up a big vision. And that's why I want to be clear that think about Memorial Field. It was one of a kind. It was built at the end of World War II. Art Carney, Dick Clark, so many greats, Nina Simone, Jackson 5 before they were the Jackson 5. But I'm pointing out that the Barclays Center is the Memorial Field of today. And our Memorial Field can come back and compete with the Barclays Center. But I'm going to get to the, but the point is, I just want to answer that. I'm happy to work with the county, but what I don't want to happen is we build something that's not going to be cost effective. And I just want more certainty that the plan that was developed, we spent close to $1 million building this economic plan for this whole area. You asked about where are the jobs. There's a plan to bring jobs and bring vitality back to the city. It's available. I have it right here. But I just want to emphasize what's being proposed by the county does not seem to enter this realm. And I want to make sure we have this dialogue before we commit to something that doesn't, that doesn't generate revenue.
Hold on for a moment. We're trying to respect the interest of time and close. I think you've had the chance to ask a question. It's been answered. We're going to keep going back and forth on this issue. I think what we heard.
But Erickson, if you want to, you have to leave with accurate information. You cannot have people get information that is inaccurate and leave that there. The plan that you're talking about, I mean, the mayor's talking about, is a substantial cost. The county is not going to spend that kind of money on the plan. If the city had that money to spend, it would have been done a long time ago. My problem that I have is that every time it's time to move this field forward, someone comes up with another plan and puts it on the back burner. Secondly, let me talk about one thing. The county is spending the money, the state is spending the money for Memorial. All the revenues go to Mount Vernon, all, right now, under the agreements we have. Every dime that they make on events go to the city of Mount Vernon. So I don't know what other deal you can actually strike. Yes.
I think a lot of people are skeptical of the county deal. They think that the county is going to take control of the field. And I heard the county executive say that he's going to hand the keys. Will you speak to that?
The county is not, let me tell you, the county is not taking control of the field. The county is spending its money. The only reason why the county is stepping in to do it is because the city has failed over 10 years to get it done. And secondly, if you look around the county of Westchester, go to any town, you're going to see fields that are built. You know who built those fields for those communities? The county of Westchester. And they did it and gave the keys back to the community to run it. Go to New Rochelle, look at Flowers Park, beautiful open fields. The only one in this county that has not been done over 40 communities is Mount Vernon, the only one. And it's the longest existing project that has not been done. I can tell you as the county legislator because guess what? I see all of those fields throughout the county, and I go and visit these communities. We approve funding for them. We approve funding for Mount Vernon. And Mount Vernon is the only community that has been stuck and not finished its legacy project. We have to get it finished. And I'm saying this, I am not, look, if the city wants to take another plan when this is finished, they can go ahead. But right now, the county is going to finish the plan with the money that it has from the state and from the county. And they're going to turn the keys back to the city to run it, and the city can keep all the revenues related to the operation.
I have one last question.
So
One last
Right.
question.
So, the young lady in the back who had your hands up, you had a
Yes,
question?
I have a question. So what the councilwoman was saying, I don't understand, if you're saying the county has this very good reputation of taking over and doing the bidding, why can't we agree on saying that, yeah, the county should take over, just as you said, and do the bidding to get this contractor to remove this dirt? It seems like such a simple
Yes.
solution, like a perfect solution, like, it's exactly clear what you said.
Thank you.
I-
So let me just address that real quick. The DEC has to approve the plan, right? So there's a plan that has been drafted by a contractor that was actually who performed the testing last year and the year before. That plan has to go to the DEC. They have to review it and approve it. Once we have approval from the DEC, we can move forward. Based on that plan, then specs for the bidding process can be drawn up, and it's in that process, it's at that stage that I am making the recommendation that the county help us and execute that plan. So it's the council, when we passed legislation and we negotiated the amendment to the intermunicipal agreement with the county, we specifically said that we want the county to manage the renovation. It was not about turning over ownership of the park, of the fields to the county. It was about the execution, the logistical project execution of the plan. And now, keep in mind that even though this plan that we're referring to was a plan that was drafted in 2011, more than $1 million has been invested in that plan. So we are where we are, and if I'm hearing the county legislator correctly, there is funding that has been approved for that plan, and going forward, certainly, I'm sure the engineering company, we can look at ways where we can build upon what is from that plan going forward.
Can I ask a question? When the job went to the county and the city was no longer in charge of it, was it because the demolition that was done last year did not follow the charter, and did it not go out to bid?
No, first of all, the county does not have control of.
No, I didn't ask that question. I didn't
Right.
ask what the county did.
No.
I'm asking
okay.
whether the city followed its own bid procedure when it demolished what was there.
When the city can answer that. I mean, I'm just going to speak with respect to what the county does not have control as we sit here of the stadium, so they can't begin any work, okay? They're going to begin work once the field is cleared. And I agree with Councilwoman Janice Duarte. If there is a plan that comes to the county, and 17 legislators have to vote on this, 17 from throughout the county, I will support a plan if the city would like the county to take over the cleanup and actually work with getting that done, and the city will stand behind it. I will support that. Why, but the city has to come forward and actually want to do that. I mean, that has not come to us yet.
All right, so as we close, I'm going to ask this question. It's almost a survey. How many of you felt that what you heard here met your expectations in terms of a city having the ability to work together?
We'll close. The panel will close their eyes.
Huh? Okay. How many of you felt that this was informative? Okay. How many of you would like to go to the next step to plan the next forum? Okay. Please sign up, get your information to us. We will reconvene to plan through what the next steps ought to be, because what we heard a lot about is the checks are not being signed. So we need to get another set of elected officials involved in the next round, and I'd like to get us there. I thank you for your time. I appreciate your questions. Please give them a round of applause. Good night.